U.S. President Donald Trump described the conversation with the Kremlin chief as a great call and said the two leaders spoke very strongly about bringing peace to Syria. During the call on Tuesday, the Russian president told Trump of the main results of his earlier meeting with Syrian President Bashar Assad. The Kremlin said Putin had discussed the civil war with the Syrian leader in Sochi on Monday. Read more. Syria conflict. What do the US, Russia, Turkey and Iran want? Moscow also said that, while talking to Trump, Putin stressed Russia's willingness to actively facilitate a settlement in Syria. He also noted the need to keep Syria's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity intact. The White House similarly said that the stability of a unified Syria should be ensured, and that the unled efforts should aim to peacefully resolve the Syrian civil war, end the humanitarian crisis, allow displaced Syrians to return home and ensure the stability of a unified Syria free of malign intervention and terrorist safe havens. However, neither the US nor Russia mentioned the future of Assad's regime, which has proven to be a major obstacle in achieving peace. Putin's diplomatic offensive. The call comes after the two leaders briefly discussed Syria earlier this month, when they both attended the APEC summit in Vietnam. Both the US and Russia are militarily engaged in the Syrian war. Read more. Trump and Putin agree on Syria, brush-off election meddling. Trump and Putin also discussed possible joint efforts against terror groups in Syria and elsewhere, targeting groups including the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. The leaders also talked about ways to achieve a lasting peace in Ukraine and efforts to put more pressure on North Korea over its nuclear arsenal. In addition to the phone call with Trump, Putin also contacted Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, promoting Russia's initiative to bring Assad's regime and the opposition groups together for a congress. Syria has been engulfed in a devastating civil war since 2011 after Syrian President Bashar al-Assad lost control over large parts of the country to multiple revolutionary groups. The conflict has since drawn in foreign powers and brought misery and death to many civilians. Syria's army, officially known as the Syrian Arab Army (SAA), is loyal to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and is fighting to restore the president's rule over the entire country. The SAA has been fighting alongside a number of pro-Assad militias such as the National Defense Force and has cooperated with military advisors from Russia and Iran, which back Assad. The Free Syrian Army grew out of protests against the Assad regime that eventually turned violent. Along with other non-jihadist rebel groups, it seeks the ouster of President Assad in democratic elections. After suffering a number of defeats, many of its members defected to hardline militant groups. It garnered some support from the US and Turkey, but its strength has been greatly diminished. Fighting between Syrian Kurds and Islamists has become its own conflict. An ethnic group concentrated in Turkey, Syria, Iran and Iraq, Kurds have long sought their own homeland or autonomy within the respective countries. The Uzald coalition against the Islamic State has backed the Syrian Democratic Forces, an alliance of Kurdish and Arab militias. The Kurds have rarely fought Assad. Islamic State took advantage of regional chaos to capture vast swathes of territory in Iraq and Syria in 2014. Seeking to establish its own caliphate, IS has become infamous for its fundamentalist brand of Islam and its mass atrocities. IS is facing defeat in both countries after the US and Russia led separate military campaigns against the militant group. IS is not the only terrorist group that has ravaged Syria. A number of Islamist militant groups, such as the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front, also known as Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, are fighting in the conflict. Warring with each other and well as with pro-Assad forces and moderate rebels, Nusra Front merged with several other entities under the umbrella name Tahrir al-Sham in January 2017. The Kremlin has proven to be a powerful friend to Assad. Russian air power and ground troops officially joined the fight in September 2015 after years of supplying the Syrian army. Moscow has come under fire from the international community for the high number of civilian casualties during its airstrikes. However, Russia's intervention turned the tide in war in favor of Assad. A Uzald coalition of more than 50 countries, including Germany, began targeting IS and other terrorist targets with airstrikes in late 2014. The anti-IS coalition has dealt major setbacks for the militant group. The US has more than 1,000 special forces in the country backing the Syrian Democratic Forces. Turkey, which is also part of the Uzald coalition against IS, has actively supported rebels opposed to Assad. It has a tense relationship with its American allies over U.S. cooperation with Kurdish fighters, who Ankara says are linked to the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK) fighting in Turkey. The Turkish military has intervened alongside rebels in northern Aleppo and Idlib province. Iran had supported Syrian President Bashar al-Assad before the conflict emerged in 2011. Eager to maintain its influence in the Middle East, Tehran has provided Damascus with strategic assistance, military training and ground troops. The Iran-backed Lebanese Shiite militant group Hezbollah also supports the Assad regime, fighting alongside Iranian forces and paramilitary groups in the country. Author Elizabeth Schumacher, Alexander Pearson, DJCMK App, Interfax, Reuters, DPA, AFP.